Hey everybody, Jen Hatmaker here. Welcome to the For the Love podcast. I'm so delighted to host you today. So guys, right now we are in a series called For the Love of You. And this felt like the right waters to steer the ship into right now. And not in the like, I don't know how that title sounds to you, but not in a way of like, let's talk about me and myself more like, what does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to prioritize your mental health and your emotional health and your physical health? And what do those best practices look like? And how can we make choices for our lives right now that are going to enable us to thrive, right? And to flourish so that our relationships also can, so that we're who we're sort of meant to be inside of the important roles that we play in the lives of our kids and our marriages and in our friendships and families. And so that's what this series is all about. Caring for ourselves in all the ways, with food, with drink, with friends, with family, with relational health, with alone time, all of it. Because we know that taking care of our jobs and our families and our commitments and our calendars is so encompassing that generally the last person we make an appointment with is ourselves. That's just true. Like, I know there's been a lot of ink spilled about this, and the reason is because it's still true. And it's not without effect. I think the willingness to neglect our bodies, our intuition, our minds and hearts and souls for the sake of efficiency or productivity, or what we would even consider to be selflessness, because we're prioritizing everybody else, it has some pretty catastrophic results. It can be relationally damaging, obviously. It can be physically damaging to our own bodies. It can harm our capacity to innovate and dream. And it's real. This is a real thing. And so taking care of our hearts and souls and minds is important. I don't know if you were following along this summer, but I had decided, having just emerged from a year where I just came out pretty battered and bruised. In the summer, I made this outrageous choice to go to Maine for 3 weeks, mostly by myself. I had some friends come up in pockets and some kids come up in pockets, but I was mainly there by myself without a real clear agenda. My agenda was to find something beautiful and heal and slow way down. I burn hot and I run hot. And so I wanted the pace to really grind down. I wanted to just see what that would do. And when I just tell you that the way I kind of felt my heart expand in those weeks, which I know that's a luxury. Of course, I know that. And, but it taught me a lot about some of these things are possible. They are available to me at all times, no matter what my life really is. It is my choice to choose to be open-hearted toward people. It's my choice to prioritize sleep. It is my choice to prioritize what I am eating and how I'm experiencing the world around me. That can happen right here. And those are the lessons that Maine gave me. And the way that I left feeling just so nurtured has been instructive for me ever since. And so, speaking of feeding ourselves, with this episode, we really wanted to look closely at what I think is an enormous element of sort of this self-love puzzle that is either overlooked or overcomplicated, to be honest with you, which is our relationship with food. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Food, man, it's been so demonized and so wrung out and mischaracterized and abused. And we could all just fill a million pages on the damaging messaging we have heard around food and what's good and what's bad and what's off limits and how we use it to reward and punish ourselves. I mean, we are just in such a food spiral. And as you know me, I love food. I mean, I just wrote a cookbook. I spent a whole year on a project that revolved around food because it's such a source of joy for me and connection. And so I just think we can do better here. I think we can do better here. I think we can decide to resist all these companies constantly telling us that we have to eat this but not that in order, to whatever hit some weird goal. I don't know. I don't know. This is at this intersection is where I'm learning to listen to my body. I'm learning to listen to what she wants, what she needs, what makes me feel nourished, even what makes me feel happy, really and sincerely. And it's a new relationship with my body and thus my body's relationship with food. And I'm leaning into it in a different way. So I think let's really tune in and listen. What is it that makes my body feel good? What is it that makes my body maybe react poorly? And then I spend the whole next day feeling miserable, right? That matters too. Our bodies have something to tell us. If we can learn to listen. So I think finding that mind-body connection is so important. It's a wonderful guide and can open up a whole new world for us in regards to how to feed ourselves well in a world that's so overly saturated with the next new thing or this culture of deprivation, just so we can look a certain way that is completely dysfunctional, right? So to help us walk through how we can feed our bodies uniquely, your body, the way that your body is formed, what your body needs and wants, and mine, tuning into what we personally need as we are very uniquely made, and then thus nourish ourselves with a lot of delight, a lot of delicious food. We have returning to the show for a second time, the absolutely wonderful Danielle Walker, my friend. So a lot of you know Danielle. She's been not just my friend, but a friend to our community for years. But let me refresh you to her story. So, and I'm just going to touch on this because she and I are really going to talk about this in this interview. But she was not just struggling with her health, she was in trouble. Like she was in hospitals and came pretty close to losing her life, and had not correlated yet, nor her doctors, to diet, to what it was she was eating. She was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and thus, having gone through all these medical interventions, finally turned to food to see if there was something there, some change, some levers to be pulled around food that might help her body to heal. And spoiler alert, it did, and almost instantly. So we're going to talk about that, because then this went from being just a part of her day to a whole life. Danielle has now built a beautiful, powerful career around this conversation. She started with a blog called Against All Grain. It's not called that anymore. She talks about that too, but she has helped people across the world now create healthy but delicious foods that don't feel restrictive at all, even if their health requires a restrictive diet like hers does. So just from a high level, her recipes are entirely grain-free and then consequently gluten-free, free of refined sugars, very low on dairy. But trust, she's such a wonderful leader and guide. There's no shame here, like eat this way or else. And she's quick to say, and she and I will talk about this, that this is her body. Like she has had to figure this out uniquely for how her body responds to food. And you will maybe different, but in her experience, she's going to guide you through what she has learned. And so this is powerful for any of us who have ever struggled with our relationship with food, who have ever used food to help our bodies heal from the inside out. Isn't that a beautiful concept? Who wonder if there might be a better way to counteract the aches, the pains, the headaches, the bloatedness, these sort of daily symptoms we've maybe just decided to live with. I wonder if there might be another way. And so, listen, she's got all the receipts. Every single receipt. She knows what she is talking about. This is her world. This is her life. This is her career. This is her voice in the world. And I absolutely love her, and so will you. So Oh, happy, happy, happy day for me to get to welcome back to the show my friend, Danielle Walker. Welcome back to the show. I'm genuinely happy to see your face.
I'm so happy to see your face. I wish we were doing this in person, but
I know.
At least we have video. And thank you.
Yeah.
I was just listening to your most recent episode, and I think you said for the first you were your own guest for the first time since it started. What, 7? Was it 7 years? Is that how long you've
4.
been going? No.
Yeah, 4. It's fine.
I multitask when I listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
But I was on it when you were first starting. So
that's right.
Here we are.
You sure were. So yeah, you're right. You were on this show at its beginning, and however that episode was, I feel like I want to apologize to you because I did not know how to be a podcast person at that point. Like I was still recording in my closet.
I know you were in your closet, and I was in Kezia's nursery because it was like it was actually my closet that we turned into a nursery, and it was the furthest away from children. So I remember sitting in there, and I think we're both in our closets. It was great.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and it was who knows. I don't even know. I don't remember those first few episodes. I can't allow myself to go back and listen to them because I'm like, oh, Jen. Oh
no, it was great.
I was overly exuberant. I just couldn't find a center spot. But now it's fine. Now I'm so good at this.
You are so good.
So good. So listen, most of my community at this point, because we've just been friends for so long, like in front of them, knows who you are, and tons of them have been helped by your work. And the approach that you take to food and health and all of it. And so, but I've got new people since you and I have originally talked, and it's been a minute. So before we kind of drill down into some of the minutia and start talking about your new book, because you and I swapped genres, which we'll get there. We swapped genres.
Who let us do that?
I don't know. Did somebody tell them I could do that and you could do that? I don't know. But can you just sort of, from a 30,000 foot view, talk about sort of your story and how you got to the point where you were like, I'm going to have to take this into my own hands?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. It is all very detailed in this new book, which I've never had a chance to do before. But I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease when I was a baby. I was 22. Ryan, my husband, and I had been married for about 2 months. And I was having a bunch of symptoms, but kind of just like, oh, it's wedding stress, all of that. Ended up in the ER, saw a ton of different specialists before somebody finally was like, let's do a colonoscopy. And found that I had ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune condition that attacks your colon, even though it's otherwise healthy. It just mistakes the good things for the bad and just goes after them. And so after spending 3-4 years on just super high doses of debilitating medications that quite honestly, the side effects felt worse than the disease itself. And then just in and out of hospitals constantly and asking every single doctor if food could help. And they all said no. But my brain just was like, this is in my colon. I mean, I was 22. I definitely didn't study medicine in college. I was marketing, but I was like, everything I am eating is going through this place that you're saying is disease. So I'm like, something is off, whether I'm not getting enough of something or I'm eating too much of something that might be, causing this. So I just started doing my own research, and I was online at 2 a.m. on medical chat boards, which was pre Facebook, Instagram.
Totally. Yes.
Everybody had their signature. It was they would type their comment and then their signature would be their name and their how old they were. And then it was what their disease was, what medications they were on. And it was this little bio about your medical history. And I started seeing people saying that they had reduced their inflammation and found remission through changing their diet. And so I set off I tried a bunch of different things. It was like, I went off of like refined white flours first, and then went gluten-free. And then ultimately, after a long process of figuring it out, went grain-free, dairy-free, and then nothing processed, no legumes. If anybody's familiar with like the paleo diet, even a very similar to a Whole30 kind of eating lifestyle, that's when things started to change for me. And I did an elimination diet and saw my symptoms decrease by like 75% within 48 hours.
Within 48 hours? Oh, I didn't remember that. Oh my gosh.
It was almost overnight. Like I got out of the hospital. I was in like a 2-3 week hospital stay when my oldest was 9 months old and couldn't see him. And it was just disastrous. Nearly lost my life that time, quite a few times, but that time particularly, and ended up going to see like a naturopath who helped me do that elimination diet. I went in to her office. I always say, like, people with Crohn's and UC, your symptoms are based on how many times you visit the bathroom a day.
Sure. Yep.
So I walked into her office at 20, I kid you not, 20 times a day.
Oh my gosh.
And just terror. And I'm like, I always say from both ends. I'm like, when you're that sick, I mean, could not keep anything in no matter what. I walked in at 20 within that elimination diet. I remember like tallying it in my journal and seeing it at like 7 within 48 hours. And I was like, holy crap, no pun intended. But like, I was like, oh my gosh, something is here. It's like something's working, because I had tried every medication and nothing worked that quick and without any other side effects on top of it. So so that's
so like incredible and also frustrating to hear that story.
So it was very frustrating. I have heard there's been lots of improvement in the last 12 years since I was there. Some doctors are, researching it, looking into it. Lots of MDs have started to kind of move into the like functional medicine practice, where they're really looking internally about like what's going on and not just slapping a Band-Aid over your symptoms with medications, which that's how I felt. I was like, I want to know why this is happening. I want to know like what's going on inside my body that's causing inflammation, that's causing it to attack things. Like, what is an autoimmune disease? And there were just none of those answers. So it was really kind of up to us to try to figure it out and to not let it own my life.
And you kind of had to pick through just a lot of nutritional landmines. I'm thinking like my brain is giving me memories of what I was always taught about nutrition, what you and I are kind of one section of living apart, but probably the same for you. Like, I grew up with the food pyramid. It was like I guess the pinnacle of good health was to eat 8 servings of grains a day. That was the base level. Like, I don't know, like fruits and veggies, let's say 1. Grains, please eat 1 loaf of bread a day, and so over the last, I would say even like 20 years, the different iterations of how to eat are just, it's mind-boggling. Like,
it is
good. The good news is that people are attaching wellness more to food in a way that's meaningful. The bad news is that it's confusing, and it's hard to know who's right. I mean, so many of it is conflicting, like directly conflicting.
Like vegan and the carnivore diet.
Exactly. And everybody kind of has data to support. And so you were having to sort this out at a time when it was even less clear. Like, it was really even muddier than it is now. And even though here your doctor's saying, no, diet's not a factor, something in you knew that it was. Your instincts were right. I'm so happy that you listened. And so what tell me more about how, what you call it wasn't a nutritionist.
Oh, like a naturopath.
The naturopath. What made you think, how did you find this? What did you think when this person starts telling you, here's what we're going to eliminate? And did you feel like, this might make me feel better, but my life is over? Because you and I love food. Like, we love food. It's not like
we do love food.
Yes. Like, I feel like that was probably good news, bad news for you.
It was horrible news.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, I was already, trying different things and had kind of like tried a few different diets to try to see if it could work. And then she like gives me this long list of all the things that I was like, what am I going to eat now? And, I mean, she kept reassuring me, first of all, like, this is a temporary thing, elimination diet, but there might be these foods that you find have really helped by cutting them out. And that is going to be a lifestyle. Like, that's a long-term thing. You need to, and that's kind of what she encouraged me too, was like, you don't look at this like a 30-day diet. Like, this is not what this is. Yeah. This is a long haul trying to figure out what your body needs to strive. And then you need to look at that as like, that is your lifestyle. Cause I mean, diet, we all did diets back in I'm like, I say the 90s, I was like 10, but I mean, but there's, my mom let me like do slim fast with her when I was like,
oh gosh. Oh, bless
not
it.
Not good.
Yeah, not good.
But that mentality of like, this is just a quick fix, and then I'm going to go back to doing whatever I want. That's not really sustainable.
That's right.
And it just is not the best way mentally to be able to like go through that. And so, so that was really helpful. Finding her, I think my sister-in-law had been seeing her for just some digestive stuff, and she had gotten her on supplements. And the way she described her to me was just like, she wasn't an MD, which did make me a little nervous. And I didn't just like stop seeing my gastroenterologist. Sure. Like, I was still seeing him, consulting him, but then seeing her to try to see what I could do kind of on the side.
Yeah.
And just to hear that she like tailored something to my sister-in-law, like based on her symptoms, based on, like her age and her weight, and that she was a female and what problem she was having. And I was like, oh my gosh, every single doctor I have seen has literally written like the same prescription. There's been no explanation. They don't care that I'm a 25-year-old woman and they're prescribing the same thing to like a 45-year-old man. They don't care that I'm getting all these terrible, side effects. They just are like, it was like one trick, thing for them. And I never felt like anybody listened to me. And I never felt like anybody actually sat down and like heard what my symptoms were, heard what my problems were, and then changed courses. It was just always kind of like, this is it. This is the only option. And so I was like, this is worth a shot, and at that point we were being faced with either getting my colon removed or this lifelong infusion drug therapy that was going to shut down my entire immune system and then obviously cost us an arm and a leg. And so, I was like, okay, we could give this food thing like 30 days to kick in. And if it doesn't, then fine, then we'll go, back down that medical path. And the worst that can happen is it doesn't work. And then we go do the surgery, or we go do the therapy. And so it was kind of a last resort, but it also felt like the safest last resort, because I'm like, nobody's asking me to take 5 extra medications. Like, I'm just changing food, which felt pretty safe to me. I'm like, there's not too many bad things that can happen there.
And then just to have such immediate, overwhelming results is incredible to hear. Can you talk about that season where you realized I found the thing? Like, I found the thing. This list of things are the things that I just need to say goodbye to. And sort of your process of learning to eat differently, learning to cook differently. Even the way in which you eventually moved from just a very like depressing, restrictive approach to more like, okay, how can this be delicious? How can I still live my life? How can I still love what I love? Because you've really done it. I mean, you have absolutely done it, but we get to see you now developed and healthy and with all your knowledge and all your practice. And I mean, this is your whole ethos now, but at the time, this is new. It's probably overwhelming. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just can only imagine it.
No, all of the above.
You feel like, I guess I'll just eat broccoli in water,
steamed chicken. Like,
it's so sad.
It was sad. And I mean, I have to like always remind people too, I was young. I mean, I was like a newlywed with my whole life. I'm type A, like very planner, right? So I'm like, I had my whole life planned out. I'm like, I'm going to host Thanksgivings and parties. And my grandma is like this amazing Italian grandmother who just always had like 50 people in her house and cooked all this incredible food. And I was like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And so, I mean, it was a lot of letting go of like the ideals that I had, a lot of grieving for a long time. And that's actually, it took me so long to commit even because of that, just like mental barrier. It was like, I've seen this work, but is it worth it? Is it worth
Yeah.
like, like losing all joy and happiness? And I talk a lot about that in the book, just about what that process is like actually standing in a grocery store aisle, like crying because I flipped this label and don't know what half of those things are and what is and isn't allowed. And just that steep learning curve for a long time. And then finding stuff that I could like actually buy, but then getting home and being like, well, what the heck do I do with
Absolutely
all of this stuff? Like,
yes.
I don't know how to make a meal out of this. And I mean, again, like I was so young, most of my cooking was like, I mean, the one thing I made for my husband all the time was I would take frozen hamburger patties, it's like straight from the freezer, plop them into a skillet and just like wait till the like heat started to kind of like, you could like scrape off the frozen meat and then dump a jar of sauce into that and then boil some noodles. Like that was spaghetti, and like in that, that was kind of the like extent of my cooking at that point. So just trying to figure out all of that as well. And like, as a newlywed, like trying to teach yourself how to like, like actually provide food rather than going through the drive-throughs that we did in college. And so, it was a lot. It just felt like a lot at once. And I did, I mean, I very distinctly remember that, just feeling like, and especially with the digestive disease, like the way I did start out on that elimination diet was super simple. I mean, it's like homemade applesauce and a piece of salmon with like salt, like that is it. Or like a burger patty with salt. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, I don't want this to be like this for the rest of my life. And so that's when I got into the kitchen, and I didn't go to culinary school. I started kind of being interested in like watching the Food Network and reading some magazines, as like I was in my early 20s, but I'd never created a recipe before. I mean, if I cooked something, it was like line by line. I am not veering off because I might screw this up.
Yeah.
And so I just got in and started like taking some of my grandma's recipes or my mom's and just trying to look and see like, okay, I can't have that, and that, like, what looks like that, like can't have milk, coconut milk or almond milk kind of looks the same, or almond flour kind of looks, somewhat, not really, but like flour. So like, what can I sub in?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of failures at first. Like my sweet husband will tell you there were so many things I put in front of him. He'd get home from work and he'd be like, what are we having? And, I'd be like all excited and put it in front of him. And he's like, okay. Oh. But again, newlyweds. And I was like, we're not wasting this. You are eating it. I will do better tomorrow.
That's right. That's right. This is in the budget, buddy. We don't have a plan B. Down the hatch.
So that's kind of how it started going. And then I started having successes and sharing them with, I had a neighbor down the street who had a similar, actually the same autoimmune disease. And I would like take stuff to my husband's office and let him taste stuff, or their like his colleagues and our family and friends, and people were like, this is good. And I was like, really? And so I started a blog in 2009, I think I started a blog, or 2008 maybe. Yeah. in those earlier days of blogging. Totally. Yeah. So that's kind of how it all got started. And I just started cataloging things as I would have successes and putting them up there with a photo shot with an iPhone that was pixelated and yellow, like under, did not look appetizing at all. But somehow my blog gained traction. Somehow.
Well, because you were a voice in the wilderness. Like, I mean, as you know, you were lonely in that place when you were working through a diagnosis that even the most expensive of medical interventions was not even taking the edge off. And so it was kind of a wasteland out there for people who suffered. I know, because I've been around your work now for so long, and I joined you on one of your tour stops for your last cookbook, or maybe it was 2 cookbooks ago. You are a prolific cookbook writer. Was it 2 ago?
It was just 1 ago, but it just feels like forever ago because
that's what it is. It was in the before times. Yeah. But I remember, like, for me, you and I sitting in that room, and it was so profound for me to listen. At one point on your tour, you let people sort of sound off in a microphone, either say something or ask questions. And the amount of people who stood up and said to you things like, I mean, I'm not really exaggerating, things like, I have my life back. And then tons of them saying, you helped me give my kid's life back to her
Yeah.
or to
Yeah.
him. It was pretty profound that this work is incredible. And I think for me, it's just doubled down because you've been so committed to find a way to write recipes that taste good. Like that's the deal, man. I mean, that's it. Like I'm trying to think of something that because you've had to sacrifice. What are the things that you don't? It's no grain, no dairy. It's pretty much almost no sugar, right?
I mean, yeah, natural sugars like honey and maple syrup. And things, but nothing like refined or processed. And
and nothing refined.
No beans, no legumes.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So gosh.
Yeah, I know it sounds like nothing, but then when I list, and that's what I was going to say, like in the beginning, I was so focused on the no's. I mean, I titled my blog "Against All Grain."
Yeah, you did.
Very negative now.
It was.
But I mean, it was. I felt very lonely. I was like, "Oh, this is cheeky. I'm swimming upstream. I'm going against the grain, and I don't eat grain." So like, but then I'm like, as time went on, I was like, "This is not good mentally for me to focus on the no's. I need to focus on what I can do."
Exactly.
And when you really do list out everything that's left, you're like, "Oh, okay, there's actually a lot."
Totally.
I'm like, yeah. And so, but yes. So, I mean, all of those things gone. So yes, it's, and that was my focus. I was just like, I can't do this forever, but I know that I need to do this forever to stay happy for my child and then my future children at that point. And I was like, the only way I'll be able to do that and make it sustainable is to make food that actually is enjoyable and make food that is nostalgic still. And that I remember from like growing up and that I can still have parties and enjoy things with my kids. And so that was like my mission. My like original tagline was to eat well and feel great. And it was just like, I actually think I might've had a tagline about something about not feeling deprived at some point too, because that's how I felt. And I knew that other people were feeling the same.
Of course.
And I just wanted to try to like be that for them.
Listen, research may tell us we shouldn't multitask with several screens, but we do it, right? But I have another idea for you, and it's way more fun than that inbox, and it's Best Fiends. You've heard me talk about it because if you've been a For the Love listener for a while, you know how much I love this game. It's like a staple in my phone. It's one of those match 3 puzzle games, and it's really the best one, in my opinion. The perfect activity. Best Fiends actually might command your entire attention though. So you've been warned because this game has a storyline. There's like good guys who are the fiends, that's the name. And then there are villains, the slugs. And your fiends start out as baby versions of their future selves. And then the more you play, the more fiends join your team. It's really, really fun. And it's challenging, like it's good for your brain. So good news also, every time you play, there's a new adventure and story to follow. And there's always new content. You're never repeating anything and it's fun. Okay. It is fun. It's absolutely free to download. Plus you can play it anywhere, with or without the internet, you guys. So download Best Fiends free today. It's on the App Store or Google Play. So that's friends without the R, Best Fiends. Oh, you guys, it's October, which means my team and I have been neck deep in scouting out the very best products for my annual favorite things holiday gift guide. Oh, this project is one of my very favorite things. Wait until you see this year. You're going to love it. For the gift guide, though, we are always working with amazing women-led small businesses. Like that's our deal. That's our metric. And I'm always reminded year after year just how inspired I am by the good that these women are putting out in the world. So you guys, now is the perfect time to plan ahead for that holiday rush, regardless if you have a small business, an Etsy side gig, or if you're just like full-time momming it and wifing it and womaning it. Okay. Here's the thing. You can go ahead and cross off the post office off your list. Bye. Because there's this thing called stamps.com. So stamps.com makes it easy, really easy to mail and ship from your computer. So you save time, my favorite, and money because actually they give you access to hugely discounted rates from USPS and UPS. And with our new rate advisor tool, you can compare shipping rates and timelines so that you can find the best option. So when your mail or packages are ready, all you do is schedule a pickup or you can just drop them off if you're out. Easy as that. It's the ultimate hack. I am telling you, I use stamps.com for literally anything I need to ship out, return, any of it. So you guys save time and money with stamps.com. And actually there's no risk. With my promo code, which is For the Love, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale. And There are no long-term commitments or contracts. So you just go to stamps.com, click on the little microphone at the top of the homepage and type in For the Love. So it's stamps.com, promo code For the Love, and you will never go to the post office again. What are some of that you've discovered along the way now? Because again, you're deep in the pool at this point. You've got so much experience around this now. What are some of your personal, like, best flavor hacks, like the ingredients or the techniques, whatever, that you have said, okay, these are some of the best vehicles, like pack this food with flavor or pizzazz, things that you think I'm going to miss this, but you have found a workaround and it's still just like utterly delicious? I know that's a weird question.
Great question. I know. I'm just trying to think. I mean, I think for like savory stuff, I don't feel like I really appreciated like herbs and spices dried. Even just your spice drawer for a long time, I was just kind of like minimal, and I feel like you can dress up anything with the right, and especially a spice mix. I have this, we call it my burnt broccoli seasoning, but it's roasted broccoli that gets super crispy, but it's the different mix of the seasonings that goes on it. That's like, you just don't expect it. Like there's all these different things that you wouldn't expect to go together, and my kids gobble it down. And so I feel like playing with different things and combining things that you may not think, otherwise would go together. And then I'm a big sauce. I mean, I have dairy-free ranch dressing, like my barbecue sauce in my fridge at all times, because I'm like, when all else fails and you don't have time for anything but like some ground meat and some vegetables, like just drench
100%
good flavored sauce. And then I would also say I never really understood the value of really browning something really well in like a good pot. Like I love leeks. I actually have a friend in the hospital. I just made her this big batch of soup, and I browned like the leeks and onions and garlic until they were like toasty, because it just adds so much flavor. And same with like meats. If you just brown them really well and you get like a very good sear, just that like depth of flavor and the different like just layers as you're making something is, I mean, I used to just like plop, I hated touching raw chicken. So I would only use the frozen like chicken breast, like pucks. And I would just throw them in frozen so I didn't have to touch them into like a slow cooker or whatever. And as I learned, like, first of all, like skin is awesome. It tastes amazing, especially when it's like browned and crispy. And you just get past the rawness, of touching it. But I'm like, when you brown that stuff, instead of just throwing it in or like just throwing stew meat in, you just get this complexity that's like, you wonder, like when you go out to eat, you're like, why does this taste so much better than what I make at home? And it's because they actually like layer like flavor upon flavor as they're cooking. And it's so true. I mean, what you're saying is just good cooking, because you did, like you said, you kind of had two pillars at the same time. One was just, how do I cook? Period. Yeah. How do I learn how to cook? And the second one then is, how do I cook with inside these sort of, limits? Yeah. And so, that's just good cooking. And so you still get to have delicious food. I would like to hear you talk more at this point about your book, Food Save Me. I mean, now it's not like you're not a writer. You've written all your cookbooks, and that's a lot of writing. Yeah. It's a lot of copy. But this is different. You are now in the memoir genre, and it is a completely different animal. What's it been like for you to like sort of grind this one out in a completely different like space? Yeah. I mean, yes, I wrote blog posts. I've like written about our daughter who we lost. So I definitely would consider myself a writer, but not an entire book of words. That's what I keep joking about. I'm like, you flip through my cookbooks, there is a photo for every single recipe. So every other page is a photo. Like it's not all words. Yeah. So it was really difficult to get started. And then, as you know, I mean, when you're like bearing your soul and you're digging up past really like hard traumatic times to try to then be able to illustrate, how I was able to come out of those, what I learned from those things. Like the after part, writing that kind of stuff is fine. But as you're sitting there writing, for instance, my 2 weeks that I spent in a Ugandan hospital, and as I'm actually reflecting now as like a 36-year-old with 3 children, which at that point I was just this dumb, like 22-year-old naive child who didn't know anything about my disease, didn't know anything about traveling that far, just had no idea, what that all entailed and how sick I was. And I look back now and like, oh my gosh, I could have died in Uganda. And at that point, I just was like, you just don't know those things when you're young. So, like writing about that process. but then also getting to remember and dig up some of the things, like the doctor who cared for me there was the first one who talked to me about healthy gut bacteria, like of all places to start to learn about actually how to take care of my body from the inside out. God took me all the way to Uganda. And I'm like, it just, so I think it was good and really cathartic for me to be able to look at the last 12 years of my life and see just how much God has been there, because I talk a lot about it in the book. I grew up with like a very conservative kind of Christian upbringing, just never really had my faith of my own. It was just because it was like, this is what you do.
Sure.
And even like the shame and guilt side of things, like if I didn't, then, like that kind of
course.
thing. So I talk a lot about in the book about how like being diagnosed that early, spending so many years sick, nearly losing my life multiple times, and also losing our daughter just caused my faith to just like crumble. And how I'm still in the process of reconstructing it to be something that's more true to me and my experiences and what I've seen. And so even just getting though to write and like dig up some memories to see like, oh wow, like actually God might have been there. Like Jesus might have been with me through those things, and it aligned these things at these times that I couldn't see in those like dark, murky times. And sometimes, like seeing it afterwards is what we need. And so
totally.
I joked for a while. I'm like, even if nobody else reads this book, it's probably good for, I'm like, it was helpful for me.
Totally.
Yeah, it was a process. And then not to mention the book was like, not done, but like very much kind of flowed out like chapters. And then I ended up in the hospital for the first time in a decade.
Yeah.
And so at that point, book was titled, it was like, had this whole other ending that was going to be like, I haven't been in the hospital for 10 years. I haven't had to be on steroids for a decade, I kind of felt like I finally had it figured out. And then I had one of the worst setbacks I've ever had. And everything I felt like I knew and was trying to teach to others was brought into question. And I sat in that hospital for 3 weeks, and then for like 4 months at home trying to recover, and was like, I don't even know if I want to write this book anymore. Like, I don't know if I still believe it. I don't know if, everything was that I've experienced up to this point with food and how much it's helped heal me was just like a fluke and it doesn't actually work. Because at that point it felt like not only had like the food failed me, but my body failed me and just, all of the above. And people started writing in, some of those stories that you said, but started writing in as I was in the hospital and just reiterating and telling me all their stories about how much my recipes had helped save and change their lives in the last decade. And I had to just tell myself, just because I hit a speed bump does not negate everything that's happened in the last 10 years.
That's right.
And so writing it after the fact was so good for me, because I learned, I like relearned some of the things that I had learned along the way with every, every like setback and flare up. I came out knowing different things about how to help my body, and to be able to read about all of those again was really helpful for me, just like to kind of reset and be like, no, this worked. And that, not only that, but I talk a lot just about how food not only, like saved my life during that time physically, but just how much joy it's brought and how it saved me in so many different ways. I mean, getting to write these cookbooks and like have a career come out of it, and getting to meet all these people and hear these miraculous stories, and getting to host things, and, just all of that it's like the title took on a different meaning as I like emerged from that hospital and kind of, looking at it in a different way.
Totally. Gosh, I would never have wished that setback on you. And I know how hard that was on you. Of course, I remember, and you and I we were texting and talking about it in real time, but I can only imagine though, that this adds a little bit of depth to your story now, inside the book, even, because the truth is setbacks are not uncommon. It's not a foolproof or a fail-proof approach. When our bodies have a million fluctuating elements. And so to me, if anything, it has also made your story a little bit more accessible, so that your readers who experience similar issues or symptoms or diagnoses can now, it lifts a little bit of pressure.
It does. It does.
Yeah. I think
and at first I didn't feel that. At first I'm like, I have imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
And all these people are telling me that they're off of medications and that they're thriving. And then I'm sitting here in a hospital bed having to go on these, heavy medications to be able to like manage and save my life. And I mean, it taught me a lot too. The title of your series right now, I think that was one element that was added to the book after the fact, because there were so many uncontrollable, kind of factors, but then also controllable in the sense that like I did 3 book tours that year, and I slept on a bus for weeks, and I we moved houses, and I just was going and kind of had that mindset of like, I'll slow down when, and so totally. I talk a lot about that in there too, of that you can eat so well, but like if you're not taking care of your mental, your emotional, your physical, everything, there's so many facets to our life. Like I quit counseling. I mean, I was like, there were lots of things that I'm like, there's a lot of things that I needed to do to take care of myself in a whole, in the wholeness, of your wellness. And it's not just the food I was putting in my body, it's sleep, it's counseling, it's processing trauma, it's, getting exercise, all of it. Like it's all important.
It is. So I love to hear you say that. That's great. That like rounds out your instruction and your mentorship into me a way that feels even more true, more possible, like more healthy, because you're so right. That's one line item in a healthy life, an important one, a huge one, but one. Right. And of course, you know that I can understand the imposter syndrome too. I wish that becoming like a voice inside our fields meant that everything always then went perfectly for us, that somehow we became immune to setbacks. And I mean, this is my work kind of in my space for women. And then to go through a divorce, I'm like, well, I've been talking about like healthy relationships and marriage forever. Like, so I get it. Like, these are the places that we care about, that we're working hard on, that we prioritize, that we can even lead well inside of in integrity. And it doesn't mean we're not human. It doesn't mean we don't in life. Yep. And so I find like with somebody like you, Danielle, and you do a really good job of leading vulnerably. Like you don't hide all that away. You could, but you don't. You share it. It actually draws me to you as a leader. It doesn't push me away at all. To me, I don't look at that and go, oh, she didn't really know what she was talking about after all. This must be a scam. It's the opposite. I see it in its fullness, and I see you as a human being. And that actually makes me trust your leadership more, not distrust it. And I think that's just something I've learned the longer I've gone at this deal, which is that authenticity feels scary, but it's strength. Not just for you, but for the people listening, right? Because you're still continuing to just hear back probably constantly, right? From your community about what your work has meant to them. Yes. We actually got to include 400 stories in the book. So like when you open up the front cover of people submitted, they're like food save me stories. And some of them, I mean, just like nothing short of miracles. I mean, it's pretty crazy, like out of a wheelchair, or, I mean, just like all these amazing stories. And I was so excited to just get to share them. Cause I mean, I started just thinking that what I was doing was only for Crohn's or colitis, right? Like, I'm like, oh, this is digestive. Like it makes sense. Oh, sure. Over the years, it's just been everything, like just run the gamut from like debilitating migraines to rheumatoid arthritis to MS to, I mean, just so many things, psoriasis, skin issues, lupus. Like I just, every time somebody submits a new story or DMs me or comes up to me at like a book signing, I just am like in awe that it could help so many different things. And I'm just like so humbled and thankful that I even get to be a part of that, because like I had no idea going into it, but that's of course like, I thought I was just going to help this like little subset of people who had what I had. And so the fact that it's grown into so much more, and that so many people have found healing, or at least like some sort of relief, from their symptoms, is special. So special. Yeah. And I was, just what you said about you and what you've gone through. And when I decided to share when I was in the hospital, I mean, I had 2 choices. I could have just totally covered that up and then emerged and been like, fine. Right. And
And that would have been so that people didn't feel like food couldn't help, because that was my biggest concern. I'm like, what if people see me sick and then they just think this thing is a sham, like you said?
Yeah.
And I knew in my heart that it could work. So I was like, I don't want people to not believe in it just because I'm sick. But then I started to think about how many people are out there watching me, watching you, who are struggling, you know, and they're feeling super isolated and lonely or like a failure. And so whatever we go through, sharing it, like there's now women who are watching what you've gone through, who have been through that, or who are going to go through that in 5 years, but don't know it now. Like that's, you know, sharing our story about our daughter. Right. That's one thing that keeps coming up. Like, I read your story about you losing your daughter 7 years ago. And last week I lost my baby girl. And I had no idea when I was watching you go through it that I was going to ever be there. Right. And so I think just choosing to be vulnerable and honest in the moment, you never know what kind of long-term impact it can have on people watching.
100% same. And I think our willingness to be authentic and transparent is contagious. I think we pass it on to our communities and they pass it on. I think it has a profound ripple effect on our communities. And I believe in it, even though it's a scary way to live. I believe in the power of that truth. I want to ask you one more question before we sort of land the plane here. One thing that I have always taken away from your story that even though I don't have, you know, the same need for that sort of, you know, restriction on my diet, as you well know, because you did offer to come photograph the cookbook, even though you could not have eaten one bite of maybe a single recipe.
I just wanted to be there for the fun. I was like, I'll photograph it.
It was fun. It was fun. You could have never taste tested. But what I share with you and what I learned from you, and I think it's really important. And again, you're setting an important example for everybody watching, is this sense of listening to our bodies. I didn't grow up in a construct that said my body had anything to tell me, only that this was a pretty rough container. And it was going to carry me around on this earth until one day, mercifully, I could shed it and go to heaven. Like and even more so that my body couldn't be trusted. That if I thought it or felt it or an instinct was probably something was wrong with that. And so one thing that you have really done from the get-go is you listen to your body. You prioritized your own instincts, even against like medical advice, but in a way that had profound consequences for you. So I wonder if you could just talk about that for a minute, how developing that kind of relationship and honoring our body's internal cues can really lead us into flourishing. Because you're a really good spokesman for this. You did this.
Yeah. I mean, I was the same way. And I think it was definitely not it wasn't my first instinct to think like everything I'm putting in could be having this, you know, potential effect. And so I think I'm grateful in the sense that I had a digestive disease, because it was kind of like this immediate, you know, thing. But everybody else that I talked to too, it's actually watching. I think food is kind of the last place that we look to. I mean, I even remember when I was like nursing babies and they would have a problem, you know, like a rash or they were colicky or whatever. Like we didn't really think about the food, but then now like moms are starting to realize, oh, what if I cut this out? Like, and it actually can help them. And so as much as I like resisted at the beginning, I ended up keeping a food journal and just recording really briefly. Was not counting calories or like weighing things. It was literally just like, I ate asparagus today. I ate whatever, you know, and then watch the next day. And if I'm like, you know, I've got this, and this symptom, and then I would record more days. Right. And I would like be able to start to kind of draw these correlating lines to like, oh, well, I ate this on Monday and I had this symptom Tuesday. And then the next week I ate that same food on Wednesday and had the same symptom on Thursday. Like, could there be, you know, something there? And so while it was tedious, it was actually really like enlightening to see like, oh my gosh, you know, like everything that I am eating really is having this impact, especially on my day-to-day symptoms. And I relearned that even with this last flare-up, was just like, I could control the severity of my day-to-day symptoms. I couldn't get rid of the flare-up, but what I ate day to day would completely dictate how I was feeling the next day. And so, I mean, that's my two like taglines that I have always said is you have to listen to your body, because again, like somebody might have found full relief and healing from being vegan. Somebody might have found, right. And I'm like, but they did that and they listened to their bodies and they figured that
That's
out.
good.
Somebody might have found, full remission and relief by eating meat and meat only. Like there's just, and they had to figure that out. And so I don't feel like there's a one size fits all. I think, the way I eat is inherently anti-inflammatory. So I think it's a great starting point, but I also had to learn the hard way because there was this one diet that I was following that said I could eat dairy. It said I could eat a few things and, and it worked for a lot of people. And so because it worked for them, I was like blinders, I'm doing it by the book, and I wasn't paying attention to how my body was reacting to that. And so I had to figure out the nuances of like, no, my body doesn't like dairy. So I can follow the rest of that, but like, I can't eat that. Or there's people that are allergic to nuts and I use almond flour. So it's just like really figuring out, I think, what works best for you and for your body and your body. I mean, it does, it tells you like
it sure does.
I always say, I'm like, I don't think God created us to live a life of like aches and pains and joint pain and disease and headaches and just all the things that we like
totally
Tylenol and Advil for. I feel like so much of it could be, mitigated at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so liberating because again, kind of like you said a second ago that we didn't necessarily attribute our baby's fussiness to what we ate the night before. I don't know that we have a different way to understand our achy joints or all the ways that we just kind of go, I guess I'm just old, but what if it is more?
Life. Yeah.
What if it's just more? What if we can really use food to heal our bodies? It's really profound. And you are in good company, which probably is affirming to you just to watch this conversation continue to grow in ways that to me feel healthy and not like it all felt maybe 20 years ago, which is kind of like pop nutrition psychology. And it was all, a new one was popping up every day, but this just feels true. It just feels like this is just how food works. And this is how our body works. And so, I think you're kind of on the front edge of this and it's going to be exciting to watch it continue to develop and how people kind of come behind you and add to it and expand what's possible. Community, I recently shared that church feels complicated for me right now, like not Jesus, but church. And it struck a chord because so many of you messaged and commented and shared that you're just in a similar place. Jesus, I know and believe, is near and good and dear wherever you are and however you are. But maybe prayer even feels complicated or new or hard too right now. So here's a little something I want to encourage you with. Sarah Young, the best-selling, most wonderful author who wrote Jesus Calling, which, by the way, has sold more than 35 million copies around the world. Sarah recently sent me a copy of her new 365-day prayer devotional called Jesus Listens. And it just hit the shelves, and it's really and truly a gem. What I love about Jesus Listens is that it's written from the vantage point of you praying to God. So whether you're new to the practice of prayer or you have been praying for years, Jesus Listens is created to lead you into a deeper, richer, truer, and more continual conversation with God. So you can get Jesus Listens anywhere books are sold. This is actually perfect timing for early Christmas shopping, stocking stuffers, a gift for your friends or your family, or honestly, for yourself. It's a good one, beloveds. Okay, I want to ask you, we're wrapping it up, and this is little quick questions I'm asking everybody in the For the Love of You series. So just kind of top of your head. Here's the first one.
Okay.
What's the number one or maybe one of your favorite things you do to personally like honor yourself? And this could be anything, like something you tell yourself, something indulgent, whatever it is. What is a way that you honor you?
Sleep, I would say, and a massage. I love a good massage, and that is like my splurge just to get those. But sleep. I just know that my symptoms, and when I'm sick, like I'm in remission right now, but if I am having symptoms, it can be completely affected by how much sleep I get. And so, I mean, somebody asked me the other day, they're like, "Are you a night owl or a morning person?" I was like, neither. I go to bed around 9:30 or 10 and I get up at 7:30. So, and I would sleep later if I didn't have young kids. But prioritizing my sleep, and when I'm sick, like actually putting it in my calendar. Cause I mean, we work full time. We also have employees. Like I will block out an hour in my calendar in the afternoon for a nap when I'm not feeling
good
well,
for you.
I just know that I won't do it because I'll push myself, and I know that I'll feel it if I don't. So sleep, I would say sleep. That's probably the
that's a good answer.
I mean, aside from food, obviously, because that's
just like a really good answer. That's one of those things most of us push to the side. Like,
I know. Well, especially as mothers too. I'm like, we just kind of sleep when we can. But
yeah, I really love that answer. Okay, here's the next question, and you're forced to answer it. Okay. If you were just going to pick, this isn't the only thing, but you're going to pick one thing, maybe your favorite thing or something that feels special to you, maybe even just right now in this season. What is something that you just personally really like love about yourself? Like in any category, like just something you're like, this thing about Danielle is the thing that I love.
Oh gosh. I think that I love friends really well.
You do.
Become very apparent in my like 30s that it's not reciprocated very often. And that's actually been a hard thing for me because I go hard for friends. Yeah. And I have to just realize that that's not the way that everybody is. But I think, I feel that's a good trait that I really value. And that I like, I don't have very many friends, I really don't, but the ones that I do, I'm like, I am all in for them, and I will bend over backwards and do anything to like make them feel loved. So yeah.
Big, loudly affirm from over here in Texas. And then this question, I asked you this the first time around. I should have gone back and looked at our transcript to see what you said, because I don't remember, but it's that last question I always ask, which is, what's saving your life right now?
Oh man, I think I told you my Honest mascara last time. I'm pretty sure.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I feel like I've answered that same thing because I like it still. It's like my favorite mascara.
That's hilarious.
My life right now. Oh my gosh.
It can be anything.
I know. There's not a whole, I feel like we've been into such, I'm like, I don't know that I'm doing a whole lot right now that's saving my life.
I do know.
Baking. I feel like baking chocolate, just doing the brownies, the cookies, all of that. Yeah. Like if I can, baking with my kids. And then just like finding a checkout TV show at the end of the night. Like
such as?
Well, right now we've been catching up on Scandal. We're like, final. Never watched it before. So that's like I want to watch it every night just because we're and then like yesterday I had a little PTSD moment with visiting a hospital that I lost my daughter in. Anyways, and I just looked at my husband, I go, I wish Bachelor in Paradise was on tonight. And I was like, and then I go, that's totally where I go in like trauma. Yeah. I just need like mindless
garbage.
Garbage.
Yes.
So yeah, that like just everything that's happening in the world right now, that's saving my life. It's mindless, like to just
mindless.
Yeah, it's mindless. Sometimes you need it.
Yeah, because our days aren't mindless. Our days are busy, and I crave mindless at night with all my being. So
and not heavy.
For saying that. Yeah. Can you just really quickly remind everybody where they can find you and the book and your stuff and all of it, all the things, Danielle?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram, Danielle Walker. 4 cookbooks that you can find anywhere. Books are sold. And then Food Saved Me is out on shelves, DanielleWalker.com, like just for thousands of free recipes. You can all there.
Well, I'm just such, I just love you.
I love you. Can't wait till we can actually like be in person again.
We're almost there. We're almost there. I know. Okay, my friend. If you're new to Danielle, aren't you excited to know her? Follow her everywhere. Her cookbooks are incredible. I don't have Danielle's sort of prescriptive need for those restrictions. This is simply just not my body. And yet I have all of her cookbooks and I make her recipes all the time because they taste good. So this is not just for those of you who need to be grain-free or dairy-free. In fact, it was Danielle who taught me about cashew cream, and it is the highest rotation in my own life as kind of an Alfredo substitute. And I know that sounds crazy. I hear myself saying it and you're like, what are you talking about? I'm just telling you, I love it so much. I put it in my own cookbook. So her food is delicious and she's a delight to follow. Her family's precious. If you go to jenhatmaker.com, under the podcast tab, we will have this episode, we will have the show notes, and then I'll have links to everything Danielle. All of her books, her website, her socials, and then obviously her most recent book, Food Saved Me. And so she is a wonderful voice in the world, beautiful, lovely, loyal, just all my favorite things. So thanks for listening, sharing this with any of your friends for whom this might be like a really powerful or encouraging message, maybe a little hope lifeline. Danielle has been that for so many people. I can't even tell you. And so be sure to share this with anyone who really might benefit from hearing it. And you guys, thanks for listening every week and for subscribing. Thanks for subscribing to the show. That's wonderful for us. There's so many of you and we love you. Also, thank you for reviewing and rating the show and your comments, your feedback. We read every word because we just want to serve you best. We want to bring you conversations and guests that you love and that you're interested in. And as always, we want this show to be a powerful place of growth and love and joy and even entertainment. And so thanks for being here week in and week out, you guys. All right. So on behalf of Laura and Abby and her whole production team, and of course, Amanda and I, we love you. And it's our delight to bring you the show all the weeks of all the year. All right. See you next week.